in all the counties other than Prince George's County, when you add up the totals, he was only 500 votes away from beating Steny Hoyer. It was the black vote in Prince George's County that put Hoyer back in office. You do scratch your head. I remember in 2008, a lot of people coming up to me and saying, you need to support Obama for president because he's black and you're black. My response was, where were you when I was running in 2006? I ran against the biggest good old boy in Southern Maryland. You kicked me all over the place. So I don't buy into that. As Zora Neale Hurston, the writer, used to say, my skin folk ain't necessarily my kinfolk. By the way, if you read any of her writings, you'll find out she wasn't much of a black liberal or Marxist either. One of the things about black history that's very interesting is that there was a group of black folk, W.E.B. Du Bois was one of them, the founder of the NAACP, who became fascinated with Marxism and socialism. Carter G. Woodson, who's widely known as the man who created Black History Month, told blacks essentially, if you're stupid enough to believe what these folks are saying, then you're on your own, but let's hope you get sense before it's too late. There were a lot of folks out there that realized that what Frederick Douglass was saying, work, work, work. Self-made men. If you ever look up self-made men and Frederick Douglass, it's one of the most inspiring speeches you'll ever read, because he understood that whether you have intelligence, whether you have family connections, whatever it is, the thing that makes the difference is work. And our heritage, we believed in work. And we got to get work back into there. And we've got to be able to get folks to where they understand that that is part of the American character. We have to embrace the American character. We may have come over here in different boats, as Martin Luther King said, but we're all in the same boat now. We got to start acting like it. So I would love to take questions about anything. My wife says I've got lots of trivial knowledge in my head. I tell her there's room, so. And I really thank you for putting up with me tonight and listening to me. So with that, let me get this back here, raise your hand. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, I saw you read the Superman.
Yes.
And it was one of the most powerful documentaries I've ever seen. How do you explain the boycotting of the Oscars? It was not even nominated as a documentary. I mean, I heard people sobbing in the theater. It was just powerful. It was that school.
Yeah, Waiting for Superman. In fact, I'm going to be getting that in my next Netflix mailing. I'm looking forward to it because everybody's recommended it to me. And from what I've read about it, it is heart-wrenching because you see the process that these kids go through, the lottery that they have to go through to be selected for charter schools. It's one of the unfortunate things is that because the school system doesn't provide enough funding for everybody to take advantage of it, the charter schools are like a laboratory where they're free from all of the restrictions and things that other public schools have to put up with. Although I have to tell you, the public schools do everything they can to try and throw obstacles in their path. I know that firsthand from Anne Arundel County. But they have these experiments, what I call them, laboratories. And they have found amazing success in communities where people thought the children were unteachable. The problem is that with this lottery system, some people get in and some people don't. And the emotion you see on both sides is powerful. The ones who get in, they're weeping for joy, and the ones that don't get it are devastated because they recognize that that opportunity has passed them by. The reason it didn't get any recognition, who runs Hollywood? I always talk about the statistic. Arthur Brooks, who wrote the book, Who Really Cares? The Surprising Truth About Compassionate Conservatism. If you ask people on the street who are more compassionate, liberals or conservatives, what do you think they're going to say? Yes. Conservatives by an overwhelming margin. The data of 10 years shows it. And that's because conservatives understand that charity is a voluntary thing that comes from them. It's not something that comes from government. Liberals are so convinced that it's government's job that they won't even give to charities that they support. Amen. Well, Arthur C. Brooks, as a social scientist, has come to the conclusion that 70% of Americans basically believe in the American principles of individual liberty, free enterprise, and limited constitutional government. So the question is, why are the 30% in charge?
Yeah.
And I always say it's because they have the megaphone. The media, academia, Hollywood. All of the institutions that shape our children, that intrude into our living rooms at night, and Hollywood is particularly frustrating to me because these are people who depend on us for their livelihood, yet they're so quick to bash our lifestyles and the things we believe. I think they're contemptible. So all you have to answer is who runs Hollywood, and that's your answer. And this is despite the fact that President Obama had the children that were in that documentary over to the White House. He saw enough power in that documentary that he wanted to let some of that rub off on him, so he had them to the White House. Yet Hollywood still decided not to pay attention to it. And you know, the teachers' unions also were dead set against that film getting any kind of recognition. So that's your answer. I'll be with you, sir. Let me get this gentleman here. And then
Hey, what's your take on what we're doing right now in Libya? What are we doing there?
well, I think that what you saw in the administration kind of illustrates how most Americans feel about Libya. I don't know how many of you are familiar with the Gridiron Dinner, which is this thing where politicians and press go and they joke about each other. It's a very insular thing the elitists do. And President Obama was joking that he was taking this measured approach on Libya, but it was hard to do with Hillary Clinton standing outside his bedroom window at the White House throwing rocks at the window. The fact is that the administration was divided on what to do. The Secretary of State wanted to go in there and wanted to go in there right away. Obama was reluctant until the UN and NATO decided to take charge. Meet Nicolas Sarkozy of France, the new leader of the free world. I'm torn because as a military man, my mindset is if you're going to go into a war zone, you go into a war zone, you commit yourself. You know, I don't believe, and this is no disrespect to the men and women that are fighting there, but I don't believe that an authorization for the use of military force replaces a formal declaration of war. And let me explain. That's right. An authorization, all an authorization does is give people cover so somewhere down the road, if it's not successful, they can say, I didn't support it.
Yeah.
I was for it before I was against it, I think is what John Kerry said. And a formal declaration of war not only commits our representatives, it commits the country. We say we're going in, we're going in all or nothing. We haven't had a formal declaration of war since World War II. Even the Korean War was not a formally declared war.
Relying more on the opinion of the United Nations than he did his own Congress.
Yes, he did.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And that should tell you a great deal about him. You know, one of the things I don't think people realize is we're all products of our upbringing. And how much time did the young Barack Obama really spend in the United States?
Not much.
And it's not surprising to me if you look at where he's been, and then as a young adult who his mentors were, I know people get bashed about even pointing to his relationships and all that, but these things shape every other human being. Why wouldn't they shape him? Why wouldn't they shape him? I believe he is a product of all of those experiences. I believe he's a product of his association with Bill Ayers. I believe he's a product of his association with Reverend Jeremiah Wright. I mean, I've been going to church. I'm not going to sit in a church for 20 seconds, let alone 20 years, if I think this man isn't teaching the gospel. So, you're absolutely right. He's an internationalist. What did he call himself in that speech in Berlin? A citizen of the world? You know, well, I went to a speech Newt Gingrich spoke at a thing that I was at not shortly after he made that comment. He said, I'm not a citizen of the world, I'm a citizen of the United States of America. Amen. Amen. Yes, sir.
How could Obama declare war or actually have a military action without checking with Congress?
That's absolutely right. That's that Congress, people don't realize the president, the executive branch, what this authorization process has done is taken power that the Constitution gave to the Congress and put it in the executive branch. Because the Congress basically gives him a blank check and then he goes and does it. Do you realize the money we're spending in Iraq and Afghanistan? I mean, he